Members, all mobile phones must be set to airplane mode and on silent or turned off. It's not sufficient to just put the mobile phones on silent, as they may interfere with the Assembly recordings. The session is being recorded in video and audio and can be accessed via live stream. Members, we have met today in regard to a request to invite Arlene Foster to appear before the committee. The committee has agreed that we will be inviting Arlene Foster in her role as former Deputy Minister, Jonathan Bell in his former role as Deputy Minister, Sammy Wilson in his former role as Finance Minister, and Patsy McGlowan in his role as Deputy Committee Chair at the time. Members have agreed. Members content?
Agreed. Just one point, Chair.
Daniel?
I know you've expressed that the intention of the committee is to bring Arlene Foster to this committee or before this committee, or request her to come to this committee in her role or former role as Deputy Minister. But I would also argue that it's important, given her role as First Minister and the time she was First Minister, particularly when it came to the closure of this scheme and any conversation that happened with the then Deputy Minister, Jonathan Bell, that there is some questioning around that particular time. And
Daniel, and that's why we've agreed to invite Arlene on, Jonathan and the Minister and the relevant committee chair at that time. Trevor?
Chairman, I mean, we were at pains to agree this for the last hour and 15 minutes. I think we came to consensus on the list of names and the reasons why we're inviting those names. The member who's just spoken has been on the public record, unfortunately, on many occasions outside of the committee, and I think it's not hard to see that politics has been played in terms of the victimisation against one individual. I think this committee has been forthright to try and get to the bottom of the resolve of this solution. That's a solution to find actually what has went wrong with this scheme. It's unfortunate that some members want to play politics with it. It's unfortunate some members have leaked papers, but maybe we don't have to look too far. I don't know.
Trevor, we've no confirmation that any committee papers have been leaked from this, and we think we've clarified that before. We have an agreed statement. We have an agreed list of witnesses. Members have unanimously agreed that at the earlier session in the roles that they were to be invited. Daniel?
Chair, just to clarify for the fact of the public record that I am not politicking. When it comes to the waste of public money to the extent of 400 million, I think it is ridiculous that any member accuse me of politicking. It's about getting answers and accountability, and it's about asking people to come before this committee. And thankfully, Arlene has agreed, or sorry, on the record has agreed that she'll come if she's requested to come, and that is to be welcomed. But I am not politicking around this issue. This is about public money. £400 million when we can't pay teachers 1% or anything else.
I know.
That's the reality. People are very angry about it.
Oliver.
Chair, thank you. And Chair, we did discuss this for quite a bit in committee, and it's important for the public out there that we drill down into this whole operation, regardless of anybody's title. And it's not the title that matters to the public, it's what's happened with this whole scheme. We must look into it, find out, and we have rightly started off today bringing main people here before the committee. We may not have finished yet, we may have more people to bring, and it's not the title that brings a person to this committee, it's their involvement in the scheme. Do we see what they can tell this committee? Because we have to deliver the truth to the public and let the public know exactly what went on here.
And I think that's what this committee has been at. We started this inquiry in September, following on from the CNAG's report in July, and I think up until date we have done a fair and thorough process. We've had the Permanent Secretary in front of us 3 times, once in closed, twice in open, with the former Permanent Secretary in front of us. We've had Ofgem in front of us, and with the Cambridge Associates in front of us as well, and I think we've made this clear that as a committee we have been, I think, above questioning the approach that we have taken with any of our witnesses, and you can see that through the evidence and the time that we've taken to drill down into the details. And I think that's stood a testament to this committee. Members, I don't want this to get into a political debate around this table now at this minute in time, or statement. And there's a number of members who have indicated to me, and members are well asked that you retain it solely to the information and the decisions we're making here today, and that's to call witnesses the future of this investigation. Trevor?
Well, again, I mean, I just want to put in public record. I mean, others want to put things in public record. I'd put in public record also. The First Minister has said on public record before we met today sorry, I hear something coming from my left, but she came in the public record before today to say if she was invited, she would come. She has nothing to hide. I know and I trust that Arlene will be forthright in everything she brings forward to the committee. But I mean, Daniel makes a very good point about public money and all of this and the scrutiny. But maybe if he took his job seriously on this committee and attended the meetings and actually stayed for the duration of the meetings
Right.
and asked the
This
questions.
As I
is
said,
about
that's-
£400 million of public money.
Daniel.
It's not about me, Trevor.
Right.
This is about the
Daniel.
DUP's misconduct in this whole
Maybe
thing.
if you come to the meetings,
The
maybe if you
cover
come
up
to
of
the
the
meetings,
thing.
Daniel,
It's a
you're not often.
It's a complete cover.
Right.
This is not about me. This is
You're
about
not very often
£400
here.
million of public money, Trevor.
Oh.
That's what it's about.
Right, gentlemen, that's enough. Seriously, the two of you. Not
You're the
Trevor.
minister.
Daniel, enough. Michelle.
Thanks, Chair. Well, I think this has been a very frustrating process for all of us. We've been at this now since September. I suppose some of the information that we've asked for at the outset we still haven't got, so I'd be keen that you proceed with the legal advice on the names. I think the public are asking lots of questions and rightly so. There's a lot of disquiet about all of this. It is our role to get a hold of the information that we need to be able to put forward recommendations, and there's a lot of I suppose I'm frustrated that there's been things that we've asked for that have not been made available to us. Some of the papers we got at the beginning of this process were heavily redacted. I think it's unfortunate that we've had to work so hard to get information to enable us to do our job. But hopefully that will not be the case. But I'm very keen that we get the names as quickly as possible, that we see where who has benefited from this, and particularly those names within the spike, I think, are going to be very interesting to see. So really, I'm keen that no matter how long this takes, we have to get to the bottom of it. We absolutely must. The public are expecting that of this committee, and whoever we need to bring in here, whether it's ministers, SPADs, whoever, that's what we need to do to find out what actually went on, how the scheme was set up so badly, and how it wasn't rectified much earlier in order to save the public purse money.
And I think that has been evident in the committee too, as I said earlier, the witnesses we have called and the witnesses that we intend to call, but also the legal advice we've taken as well in regards to challenging under data protection who we can see and what we can't see.
Do we know, Chair, when we'll get that back?
We have forwarded that legal advice to the department to see when we will receive additional information on the list of applicants at this matter in time. Gordon.
Chair, all I would say is that as a member of this committee, the committee has done a good job to date. I think they've carried out the business in an open and transparent manner, and all members from all parties have taken part in the discussion, in the questioning and in the debate before and after. And I think it is important that we get to the root of this issue. We get to the cause of the problem. We identify where the weaknesses are, we identify who's responsible, who's accountable, and we put in place effective and corrective actions to stop any recurrence of this ever happening in the future in any government department of which we are responsible for. We're here, we're elected, we have a very responsible job to do. We must at all times uphold the highest standards in relation to integrity, honesty, transparency and truth, and that's what we're elected for, and that's the principles I stand by, principles I was brought up on, and I intend certainly to continue with those, and I trust this committee will get to the bottom of this issue and the truth will be found and the issues dealt with effectively.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Gordon. Robbie.
Thank you, Chair. I echo what Gordon has just said. I think it's a priority for this committee to help restore public confidence in the political process, setting aside party politics in all of our dealings, whether it be in this committee or outside of here. I think it's incumbent, and we've already agreed that we will get the right people here, but I also would like to record we need to get the right people here at the right time, in the right order, to make sure that we peel this back appropriately, identifying evidence that will lead to, as Gordon has said, to identify all of the weaknesses, not just the political, but in terms of the process as well, to ensure that this is learned from, and it hasn't been the case in the past, that we've heard from some of the ministers that lessons weren't learned before. From the Permanent Secretary, sorry. And I don't want to be part of a committee that doesn't add value to Northern Ireland going forward.
Okay. And I think, again, through the support we've had from the Northern Ireland Audit Office and the Controller Auditor General in this piece of work, I think it has been unprecedented in the history of PAC and Stormont, anyway, the length of detail that we've went to, and the length of detail that we've went to unbiasedly up to date, and I hope that's going to continue. Carla?
Thank you, and thank you, Chair, for bringing me in. I suppose just in the same vein as my colleague, I want this to be an efficient and effective investigation. We are not, as a PAC, going to be pushed into a trial by media, and I think that's important to outline today. It's important that we, as members, remove ourselves from the politics of it and ensure that we see ourselves as custodians of the taxpayer and ensure that we get to the bottom of the issues. I want actually as well to commend the First Minister in for coming forward and saying that she will come to the PAC committee, because I know that that's not the normal procedure. So I want to actually commend her, and I know that this PAC committee, if it does rise above the politics, it will get value for money, and it will ensure that Northern Ireland going forward, that we put checks in place to ensure that this doesn't happen again. So I think we need to start off on that vein, and we need to keep our eyes focused on ensuring value for money.
Yeah. Okay. Daniel?
Yes, Chair, just to echo some of the comments and to follow on from what Michelle has said, I think it's absolutely vital that a list of names is furnished to the members of this committee so that we can see who has benefited from the scheme.
Committee has went down
Yes,
and
yes, but just
took the legal advice
it's
on
important that we have that out there, and I want to just add to the record that I want it in the public domain eventually. It's far too important to be covered up or kept behind closed doors. Chair, I do respect the work of this committee. I think that the committee has worked tirelessly for a number of months now on this investigation. It never fails to shock some of the revelations that we're pulling up week in and week out, but none more so than what has come up in the media this week. There is a trial by media going on, that's without a doubt, but there is substance to quite a lot of the accusations, some very serious, that have been made, and I think it does give rise to the need for this meeting today for us to discuss such in that. I do also think that given the revelations that continue to come out, that the best possible outcome in the interest of public interest is that eventually an independent investigation into all matters will be the way forward. I think it's the only way we're going to get openness, transparency, honesty and truth. And I think that in the wider interest of public money and the wastage to the extent it has been and the lack of information coming from some quarters needs to be the way forward.
I suppose in regards to your comment there and an independent investigation, I suppose that's exactly what the Controller Auditor General and the Northern Ireland Audit Office did to bring this into the public domain. That's what we as the Public Accounts Committee have picked up on. Actually, before the report was published, we agreed to look into this in June. The report wasn't published to July. And as soon as we were reconvened in September, we started into this piece of work. So in regard to the independent review, I think the work we're doing is the initial independent review was from the Controller Auditor General. And as a Public Accounts Committee, it's our role and remit to look after the value of the public purse and follow the public pound as to where it's been spent or where it's been wasted. And I think that's what we're doing. If we were to simply surrender ourselves now that another independent investigation has to be started, I would leave what we have done and what we intend to do as mute and useless. So I wouldn't accept that at this moment in time, because this committee has a long piece of work to do. We've started a long piece of work, and I think as Chair I'll make sure it's going to be concluded. Michelle?
Yeah, I know where you're coming from, Chair. The difficulty that I would have is that if the advice comes back that we don't have the right to, for example, the names and addresses, then that's where you get extremely frustrated that we won't be able to get, and as I said earlier, the fact that the papers that came to the committee at the beginning were heavily redacted and all the rest of it, I think we've struggled to get to that point. If the advice comes back that we're not entitled to that information, I think we've no choice but to call for an inquiry that has the ability to look at everything, including personal emails and all of the issues that we have had, that we've struggled to get a hold of.
Can we cross that bridge when it comes? Because our legal advice is with the department at the minute as to whether they can release those names at this minute in time, and we're waiting on their response, which is due in early January, as to whether our legal advice stacks up. Carla?
Chair, suppose I just want to clarify for the public, and I would like you to clarify it as chair, because obviously Daniel has raised an issue and it has made it look like this committee hasn't been proactive around obtaining the names. And I think it's important, just for the public perception out there, for you to outline clearly what this committee has done in that regard, so that there's no ambiguity in the public domain that we haven't been seeking for the names.
Thanks for that, Carla.
Pleasure.
I suppose where we are now, it has been something, is this the same issue?
It's the same issue. I mean, and on your clarification, Chairman, I mean, and you've referred to it, and I'm not criticising the way you've done it, you're talking about legal advice. We need to be clear on that confirmation that this is this committee's legal advice. This hasn't been external advice from DETI or from another department. This has been legal advice that has been acquired by this committee, who has given us the advice. And I mean, if you can include
And I
that.
think, Chair, the reason, and the reason that I put it to you, if I say it, there may be members that say, oh, you're just doing this. So I want
I
you
suppose
to outline.
where we are in regards to legal advice in having the list of names of applicants for the non-domestic RHI scheme, we were initially told, and I'll seek guidance from Kieran there if necessary, we were originally told that they couldn't be released under data protection by the department. As a committee, we challenged that, and we took legal advice under data protection legislation. And at this minute in time, our advice is that personal data can be withheld, but the name of companies and or limited businesses and or charities or other organisations is not protected under Data Protection Act, because it's only personal data that can be protected. So we've asked the department to re-look at their guidance under data protection, taking our legal advice into consideration. And due to the nature of this inquiry and to the nature of the information that's been held, the department will come back to us in early January, because they have a specific time frame, or they're allowed a specific time frame to respond to this committee. So we will be in access of either of them telling us, no, you can't have this, their legal advice is in contrary to our legal advice, which takes us down another avenue, or yes, they can give us a level of access to names of companies and or alternative businesses that have applied or availed of the non-domestic RHI. Robert.
Thank you, Chair. In light of that piece of information you've given, Chair, and the legal advice has come back, could you give clarity on, and this is given the evidence that this has presented itself within this last week, as alluded to by the Auditor General, when those companies applied and at what stage their application was verified? Because I think that's going to become very important.
I suppose in regard to the piece of work we were looking at as to when the spike happened.
Yes.
So that has been asked for, and it's something we need to do, investigate, because it is a crucial part into the whole process and the additional spends.
Yeah.
Okay, members, any other business? Members, can I thank you for coming in for this recall? Trevor Lunn was with us, but had to leave due to another commitment. I just want to acknowledge that he was here. Members, if no other business, can I wish you once again a happy Christmas. Agenda item 4, date, time and place of next meeting. PAC will take place Wednesday the 11th of January, 2 p.m. in the Senate Chamber, Parliament Buildings. Members, can I declare this meeting adjourned?